It was just another routine mission. At least that's what the world was told. NASA's live feed buzzed steadily, a quiet, constant hum from 250 miles above the Earth. The International Space Station floated in silence, orbiting at over 17,000 miles per hour. Inside, the crew spoke in calm, clipped sentences running through protocols with mechanical precision. Then came the voice. "We're seeing, something. It's moving fast, outside at our 10 o'clock. A pause, more static. The feed flickered. The transmission picked up again. This time, the tone had shifted. "It's changing direction, definitely not debris. Houston, are you seeing?" And then, silence. Not the awkward silence of a dropped call, but a full, immediate cut. The screen went black. The audio died. A generic technical difficulties screen replaced the feed. No follow-up, no clarification, and no official comment. When the stream resumed minutes later, the crew had moved on. No mention of what had happened. The voice never returned to the subject, as if it never occurred. But those few seconds, now preserved, dissected, and spread across every corner of the internet, left a question that refuses to fade. What did they see? NASA would later attribute the glitch to a signal dropout, a routine loss of connection. Perfectly normal, they said. But for those watching live, it didn't feel routine. It felt deliberate, and this wasn't the first time. Over the decades, similar moments have peppered the history of spaceflight, instances where astronauts begin describing anomalies, only for the feed to mysteriously cut out. Always at the peak of tension, always just as the unexplainable makes itself known. Coincidence? Maybe. But how many coincidences does it take to become a pattern? This is the story of those moments. The sightings NASA won't explain, the voices that were never heard again, and the silences that seem too perfectly timed. Because sometimes in the vast, cold quiet of space, it's the things left unsaid that speak the loudest. Officially, space is a vacuum, vast, silent, and empty. That's the line we've been given, one repeated in textbooks, press briefings, and neatly packaged public statements. There is no evidence of extraterrestrial life, NASA says, again and again, as if the repetition alone makes it true. But beyond the press conferences and the polished public image, a different story lingers, told in static-laced transmissions, blurry footage, and off-the-record remarks. A story built not on fantasy but on fragments, documented sightings, leaked videos, unexplained objects that defy conventional physics. Like the flash of light that streaked past Apollo 11, noted briefly by the crew, then never mentioned again, or the odd pulsing signal intercepted in 1993 which was scrubbed from official logs but recorded by amateur radio operators who were listening. And then, there are the astronauts themselves, the very people trained to follow protocol, to observe, to report without embellishment. Some of them whisper, carefully. Through veiled interviews, cryptic statements, or memoirs published long after retirement, they speak of movements that didn't match orbital mechanics, shapes that didn't belong, moments that didn't make sense. Yet the official stance remains. Space is empty. Anything else? Optical illusion, camera malfunction, cosmic rays. But how can a camera malfunction describe intelligent motion? How can cosmic rays explain coordinated flight paths? There's a widening gap between what we're shown and what's left in the shadows, between the silence of NASA's press rooms and the unshakable whispers echoing from the edge of space. And in that contrast lies a question too large to ignore. Are they hiding something, or simply afraid of what they've seen? September 15, 1991. The Space Shuttle Discovery orbits Earth during mission STS-48. From high above the planet, a camera mounted on the shuttle records the calm beauty of the atmosphere. Glowing clouds, the deep curve of the Earth's horizon, and a few drifting particles illuminated by the sun. Then something happens. A small object appears in the lower portion of the frame. At first, it seems like space debris lazily floating across the camera's view. But suddenly a bright flash erupts, brief, intense, and in that instant the object reacts. It sharply changes direction, not a drift, not a wobble, a deliberate angular turn, acceleration that defies expectation. No visible propulsion, no clear explanation, just movement, controlled, responsive, and immediate. The footage spread quickly. Analysts, enthusiasts, and physicists alike debated its meaning. The official explanation? NASA called it an ice particle knocked by a puff of gas from the shuttle. Harmless, ordinary. But critics pushed back. Ice doesn't accelerate against its own inertia. It doesn't change vectors like it's avoiding something. And certainly not with that kind of speed. Could it have been an intelligent craft reacting to the flash? Possibly a weapon or a scanner? Or was it simply, as NASA claimed, an everyday event blown out of proportion? The trouble is, when you watch the footage, it doesn't feel like nothing. It feels like a mistake, a glimpse of something we weren't meant to see. And it raises an uncomfortable possibility. If something did maneuver in space that day, then it wasn't just orbiting debris. It was flying, and where there is flight, there may be a pilot. He was the second man to walk on the moon, a national hero, an aerospace engineer, and one of the most decorated astronauts in history. Not a man prone to exaggeration. So when Buzz Aldrin went on live television and said there was a monolith on Phobos, people listened. "There's a monolith there," he said plainly, referring to Mars's oddly shaped moon. When people find out about that, they're going to say, "Who put that there? Who put that there?" He wasn't laughing, he wasn't joking, and no one made him take it back. The object Aldrin referred to is real, a tall, rectangular anomaly casting long shadows on the Martian moon's desolate surface. It stands out sharply against the natural terrain, so much so that satellite imagery confirms its presence without question. NASA hasn't denied its existence, but they've also never explained it. No press conference, no investigation, no geological analysis, just silence. Aldrin's choice of words, monolith, immediately recalls Arthur C. Clarke's 2001, A Space Odyssey, where a black alien structure appears on the moon as a trigger for human evolution. Was he invoking symbolism, or was he hinting at something deeper? Why would a man who spent decades serving the space program say something so provocative so casually? Perhaps more importantly, why has it been ignored? This wasn't a fringe theorist making wild claims. This was Buzz Aldrin speaking on national television, suggesting that an artificial structure might exist on one of Mars's moons. And just like that, the story faded. No follow-up questions, no official response. The monolith remained, sitting silently on Phobos, barely mentioned again. Moments like this are rare. When someone of authority lets the truth slip even briefly, it tends to be buried fast. But once said, it can't be unsaid. What did Aldrin know, and what made him say it out loud? It's become a pattern so consistent it borders on choreography. A glowing orb appears on NASA's live feed. It hovers near the International Space Station, sometimes pulsing, sometimes drifting slowly against the backdrop of Earth. Then, just as the shape comes into focus, the feed stutters. Pixels smear, static creeps in, and then blackout. A familiar message appears. The high-definition Earth viewing experiment is either switching cameras or experiencing a temporary loss of signal. It's never during maintenance, never during empty orbital passes. Always at that moment, when something unusual enters the frame. Once might be coincidence, twice, Unfortunate timing. But dozens of clips now circulate showing the same sequence. Anomaly appears, feed cuts, explanation absent. Why is the live stream so stable until something unexplained shows up? NASA's response is always the same. Technical glitches, buffering, cosmic interference, convenient routine reasons. But viewers aren't convinced because the anomalies themselves, the shapes, don't look like debris. Some glide with intent, some pulse with light, forming triangular formations. A few even appear to respond to the station's movements. And the timing is too perfect, always the moment before something compelling happens. It's as if someone's watching the watchers and pulling the plug when the view becomes too revealing. The public feed was meant to promote transparency, a window into space, but over time it has started to feel more like a filter, a carefully curated stream designed to not show too much. So the question becomes painfully simple. Are we losing signal, or is someone cutting it? In 1996, during NASA's STS-75 mission, a 12-mile-long experimental tether was released from the Space Shuttle Columbia to test the generation of electricity through Earth's magnetic field. The tether deployed successfully until it snapped unexpectedly and drifted into space. And that's when the cameras caught something extraordinary. As the severed tether floated silently, dozens, possibly hundreds, of disc-shaped objects emerged. They weren't random. They weren't chaotic. They moved with startling coordination. Some hovered, some drifted toward the tether. Many appeared translucent with central holes like pulsing jellyfish in space. The footage, recorded in infrared, showed the objects glowing with intensity. NASA labeled them space debris, ice particles, sun glare. But the movement didn't match. These objects shifted direction. They moved at varying speeds. Some even appeared to stop. What kind of debris acts alive? The STS-75 video was released to the public, possibly because it was live and too late to suppress. But that didn't stop NASA from retreating to its default explanation. Ordinary materials, optical illusion, nothing more. Yet seasoned observers knew better. The scale of the objects was off. If the tether was 12 miles long, some of these shapes were miles wide, enormous, silent, and seemingly aware. The footage became one of the most studied and hotly debated in UFO research. Not because it was blurry or ambiguous, but because it was too clear. A rare, unfiltered moment. A glimpse of something that shouldn't have been there. And like so many times before, it was dismissed, filed away, forgotten. But the images still linger, glowing discs floating near a failed experiment. Observing, curious, close, not malfunction, not myth. Just one question left in their wake. Who or what came to inspect the tether? Colonel Gordon Cooper wasn't just an astronaut. He was a test pilot, an aeronautical engineer, and one of NASA's original Mercury 7, the elite pioneers of American spaceflight. He flew solo around the Earth 22 times. He held the U.S. record for longest manned spaceflight, and for decades he kept a secret. In the early 1950s, while stationed at Edwards Air Force Base, Cooper was supervising a team filming precision landings. It was a clear day. The camera crew was set up on the tarmac when something unexpected happened. A metallic saucer-shaped craft descended silently, hovered briefly, and then shot upward at an impossible angle. The entire event was caught on camera. Cooper confirmed the footage existed. He even sent it up the chain of command, but he never saw it again. "I watched it," he later said. "It was real." But the film disappeared into military channels, and that was it. Cooper held his silence for years, maybe because he was a soldier, maybe because he knew what speaking out would cost him. But as the years passed and retirement gave him space from the machine, he began to speak more openly, not recklessly, not with dramatic claims, but with a quiet certainty. "We are not alone in the universe," he once told a UN panel. "They have been coming here for a long time." He didn't offer speculation. He didn't claim to know their origin. He simply stood on the weight of his own experience and pointed to the silence around him. By the time Cooper passed away in 2004, his legacy was cemented: a space pioneer, a national hero, and maybe, just maybe, the man who tried to leave us one last message before the void swallowed it. Not all astronauts speak openly. Some choose poetry over confession, metaphor over admission, and yet their words echo with an eerie consistency, fragments of truth hiding in plain sight. Take Dr. Edgar Mitchell, sixth man to walk on the moon. He stated plainly in interviews, "We have been visited. We are not alone." He claimed to have spoken with high-ranking military officials who confirmed the existence of recovered craft, not from Earth. Yet NASA remained silent. No denial, no rebuke. Then there's Story Musgrave, veteran of 6 space shuttle missions. When asked about strange sightings during his time in orbit, he answered carefully, "You see things out there, and you have to ask yourself, are we being observed?" He never said yes. He never said no. Buzz Aldrin once cryptically described something out there following Apollo 11. The official story labeled it a misidentified panel from the spacecraft. But Aldrin's interviews over the years have hinted at more. There's something there, just watching. Why do these men, engineers, scientists, pilots, consistently choose language that dances around direct disclosure? Perhaps because they can't say it outright. Perhaps because they already have. In their hesitation lies a strange kind of testimony, a breadcrumb trail left not by fringe theorists, but by those who have seen the stars up close. No wild claims, no definitive proof, just a chorus of almost sayings echoing from orbit and back. In the vacuum of space, silence is law, but on Earth these hints remain suspended, neither confirmed nor denied. The truth may not come in the form of a headline or a press release. It may come in whispers, and in the words of those who saw too much and chose to speak just enough. For decades, NASA has been the shining symbol of human space exploration. The televised launches, the moon landings, the astronauts turned household names. To the public, it represents the peak of space authority. But behind the clean press releases and the patriotic pageantry lies a deeper truth. NASA doesn't run the show. In the hierarchy of space operations, NASA is the visible layer, the storefront. The real power lies in what's hidden behind the curtain: military branches, defense contractors, and black-budget programs operating far from public oversight. The U.S. Space Force may be new in name, but its infrastructure and funding predate its logo by decades. Satellites, surveillance systems, and experimental crafts have been quietly developed under a veil of national security. And then there's DARPA, Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, corporations with billion-dollar budgets and classified aerospace projects no civilian agency ever touches. In this structure, NASA isn't in control. It's not even cleared to speak. There are compartments, layers of secrecy where information is siloed by design. You don't ask what you're not meant to know. So when people ask, why doesn't NASA just tell us the truth? They may be asking the wrong question, because NASA might not be allowed to know the truth. And if it does, it certainly isn't authorized to say it. On September 10, 2001, Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld stood before the press and made a stunning admission. Over $2.3 trillion in Pentagon transactions couldn't be accounted for, just missing. The next day, the world changed, and that announcement was forgotten. But the money? It didn't disappear into thin air. Experts believe large portions of these untraceable funds feed into black projects. Classified programs so secretive not even Congress knows the full scope, and a significant chunk of that money likely goes up. Advanced propulsion experiments, space surveillance systems, suborbital platforms that never appear on any public NASA manifest. These aren't science fiction fantasies. They're part of an opaque infrastructure that spans aerospace and defense, built on billions in undisclosed expenditures. It's been called the breakaway civilization, a realm of off-the-books science advancing at a pace the public isn't allowed to see. And in that realm, outer space isn't exploration. It's territory. Visualize it. Streams of money rising into the night like vapor trails, disappearing into research labs, underground testing facilities, orbital prototypes, never seen again. NASA's budget, by comparison, looks like pocket change, a public relations arm showcasing rockets while the real work happens in silence. Every year, government audits flag more untraceable billions. Every year, nothing changes, and so we're left with a simple, uncomfortable metaphor. The sky is black because that's where the money goes to hide. What kind of technology can you build with trillions in unaccounted funds? And more hauntingly, what if it's already been built and launched without us ever knowing? From grainy World War II pilot reports to crisp, high-resolution ISS footage, one detail remains oddly consistent: the shape. Not saucers, not triangles, just orbs. Glowing spheres of light. They appear at high altitudes in low Earth orbit near launch sites over oceans, deserts, and occasionally in broad daylight. Silent, brilliant, floating without wings, propulsion, or obvious mechanics. Sometimes solitary, sometimes in fleets. Why? Skeptics argue it's a coincidence, a trick of light, weather balloons, satellites seen from strange angles. But that explanation wears thin when the same shape appears across decades, continents, and in vastly different conditions. Even NASA's own footage is riddled with orb-like anomalies, the very ones they call ice particles or lens flares. But the orbs are too dynamic, too responsive. They move with the spacecraft. They appear and vanish, shift directions, pulse as if alive. Ancient cultures painted similar spheres in the sky, glowing discs descending from the heavens. The Dogon tribe, medieval woodcuts, even cave drawings. Not metallic ships, but luminescent globes. Coincidence? Or continuity? Could the orb be a design, deliberate and optimal for operating across dimensions we don't yet understand? No drag, no inertia, no friction. Just presence and intent, moving through space like light through water. And if these orbs are not craft at all, but entities, living forms of energy, intelligence without form, then the shape makes even more sense. No need for wings or engines, just will. It challenges our assumptions, our technologies, our idea of what flight even is. Because if so many witnesses, from astronauts to soldiers to civilian, have all seen the same thing, then maybe it's not about what we think they are. Maybe it's about what they've always been. Imagine watching a bird fly, and then make a sudden right-angle turn at full speed without slowing down. No arc, no curve, just a snap to a new direction. Now picture that bird doing it in space. That's what we've seen, time and time again, from unidentified objects tracked by military radar, filmed by astronauts, and analyzed by aerospace experts. Sharp turns, sudden stops, reverse trajectories, maneuvers that defy inertia, momentum, and every law of classical physics we rely on to launch rockets and keep satellites in orbit. How? A craft obeying Newtonian physics would tear itself apart attempting a 90-degree turn at thousands of miles per hour. The G-forces alone would liquefy any pilot inside. And yet these objects execute such movements with apparent ease, as if gravity, inertia, and resistance don't apply. U.S. Navy pilots have described UAPs accelerating from 0 to Mach 10 in seconds. No heat signature, no sonic boom. Just movement, Impossible, perfect, clean. Footage from shuttle missions shows glowing spheres zigzagging through space, stopping mid-vacuum, then darting off at incredible speeds. What kind of technology allows for that? Anti-gravity? Inertial dampening? Or is it something far beyond propulsion? A manipulation of space-time itself? Some theorists suggest these objects aren't moving through space at all. They're moving around it, bending the medium as they go, warping reality like a stone skimming across water. If true, they're not just more advanced than us, they're playing by an entirely different rulebook. So the real question becomes, are we witnessing mechanical flight or something else entirely? Something that doesn't come from our world or even our physics? It's one of the greatest achievements in human history. Apollo 11, the first time mankind set foot on the moon. Millions watched Neil Armstrong descend that final ladder rung, his voice crackling over the airwaves. That's one small step for man. But what most don't know is this: the original highest quality broadcast tapes of that historic moment. They're gone, not misplaced, not damaged, erased. In 2006, NASA admitted that it had accidentally recorded over the original Apollo 11 telemetry tapes, supposedly in an effort to reuse magnetic media during a budget crunch. Gone with them were the raw data streams, higher resolution footage, and unreleased angles of the landing. The explanation? Simple mismanagement, bureaucratic oversight. But how do you lose or overwrite the most important video footage in human history? Many aren't buying it, because erasing those tapes doesn't just eliminate data, it eliminates scrutiny. It eliminates the possibility of analyzing unfiltered footage, uncompressed images, unedited audio. It eliminates the chance to see what was actually seen, not what was broadcast. What might have been in those frames, a shadow, a reflection, something else? We'll never know, and that's the point. Because in a world where tapes disappear, feeds cut out, and archives go silent, one truth remains. Sometimes what we're told was an accident, was the plan all along. From 1952 to 1969, the U.S. Air Force ran Project Blue Book, an official investigation into unidentified flying objects. By the time it was shut down, the project had analyzed over 12,000 reports. The conclusion? Nothing to see here. No evidence of extraterrestrial technology. No threat to national security, case closed. But was it? Because sightings didn't stop. Reports continued, from pilots, radar operators, and even astronauts. And behind the scenes, so did the monitoring. Declassified documents now reveal a network of intelligence agencies, defense contractors, and satellite programs that continued collecting data well beyond 1969. In fact, some suggest Blue Book was never truly about transparency. It was a public relations front, designed to quiet the growing questions while the real investigations went black. And while the Air Force walked away, NASA stayed silent. That silence is telling, because during the exact years Blue Book ended, NASA's deep space exploration was in full swing. Lunar missions, space stations, unmanned probes, thousands of hours of footage, telemetry, and unexplained anomalies. But NASA never commented, never confirmed, never denied. Instead, they watched. Take the STS-80 mission. Objects ascending from Earth into space caught on NASA cameras, still unexplained. Or the recurring pattern of sightings near shuttle flights. NASA's reaction? No press conference, no statement, just business as usual. It's almost as if the agency isn't there to ask questions, only to observe and report. Some insiders believe a second layer of oversight emerged after Blue Book's closure. Not public, not accountable, but deeply embedded. A compartmentalized network where data flows upward and outward, never down to the public. And in that structure, NASA plays its part. Not as the source of disclosure, but as the collector of secrets. Because while Blue Book may have closed, the real archive is still wide open and sealed tight. Across decades of observation, one pattern becomes increasingly difficult to ignore. They show up when we make noise, whether it's the launch of a rocket, the detonation of a nuclear device, or the outbreak of a catastrophic event. Strange lights appear in the sky, silent, patient, watching. During nuclear tests in the 1940s and 50s, military reports detailed unidentified craft hovering just beyond blast zones, objects immune to shock waves, unbothered by radiation. In some cases, they arrived before the test as if they knew what was coming. During the Apollo missions, astronauts reported moments of static, odd shadows, and company during parts of their journey, stories often dismissed or buried. Yet behind the scenes, mission transcripts contain strange gaps and phrases coded to avoid public alarm. Even today, as SpaceX rockets roar skyward or geopolitical tensions rise, cameras occasionally catch orbs, fast-moving objects, and curious shapes lingering near the stratosphere. So why do these things appear? Why do they come close, but never make contact? Some suggest they are observers, silent witnesses to humanity's progress or warnings unspoken. Perhaps they monitor critical thresholds, nuclear capability, space expansion, environmental tipping points. Perhaps they're not here to harm, but to watch. Yet that idea comes with a chilling implication. If we are being watched, then we are being judged. And what does it say about us that our most violent, most unstable moments are the ones that attract attention from above? Maybe they don't intervene because they can't, or maybe they choose not to. We look to the sky and wonder if we're alone. But what if they're already here, just beyond our reach, waiting for something we haven't yet earned? It's a haunting thought, the cradle of civilization under silent surveillance. A species fumbling toward the stars, unaware it's already being studied. After the Apollo 17 mission in 1972, something strange happened. We stopped going. Humankind, after conquering the moon, suddenly retreated from deep space. No more lunar landings, no Mars missions, just low Earth orbit, satellites, shuttles, stations. Decades of circling close to home. NASA cited budgets, priorities, political will. But the world never truly bought it. We had the technology, we had the momentum, and then silence. Some believe something happened out there, something NASA won't talk about. Whispers of encounters, transcripts with redactions. Astronauts returning not as heroes, but as men changed. As if they'd seen something that made the vastness beyond feel off limits. Was the moon just the edge of a fence we weren't meant to cross? In the years since, every plan to return, to go farther, has stalled, defunded, or failed. It's as if something or someone doesn't want us venturing too far beyond our world. And maybe we listened. In 2023, a former U.S. intelligence officer named David Grush stood before Congress and made a claim that rippled through the world. The U.S. government, he said, possesses non-human craft. Craft not made by any known nation, not theoretical, recovered, real, and not alone. These vehicles, he testified, were part of a hidden legacy of reverse engineering efforts spanning decades. His claims were specific, controlled, delivered under oath, and backed reportedly by dozens of witnesses and classified briefings. The response from NASA? Nothing. Not a denial, not a debunking, just silence. And that silence speaks volumes. Because while the Pentagon scrambles for transparency, NASA, the agency most directly associated with space, science, and contact, remains on the sidelines, carefully avoiding the conversation. One would expect outrage, or rebuttal, or at the very least interest. But instead, NASA offers nothing. No press release, no interview, no shift in tone. Why? Could it be that NASA isn't uninformed, but instructed? That the agency, deeply intertwined with defense contracts and government oversight, simply isn't authorized to comment on what it can't control? Or worse, perhaps it already knows, and in knowing, says nothing. Grush's claims are not alone. Other whistleblowers, pilots, and insiders have spoken of retrieval programs, crashed vehicles, and biological remains. If even one story is true, the implications are staggering. And in the void where NASA should respond, a darker thought emerges. What if we're not waiting for contact? What if it already happened, and we're the only ones not officially told? NASA is a master of language. Its public statements are meticulously worded, shaped to inspire curiosity, but never panic. They celebrate discovery, they hint at mystery. But when it comes to extraterrestrial life, they speak in carefully filtered terms. We have found no evidence of alien life. Not, there is no alien life. That difference is everything. It's the language of plausible deniability, legal, precise, and frustratingly vague. The phrasing leaves room for interpretation, room for secrecy, room for truth without admission. In press briefings, NASA officials often emphasize the search for biosignatures, chemical hints of life millions of miles away. They point to exoplanets, Mars soil, icy moons. But when anomalies appear right here, near Earth, captured on NASA's own cameras, the tone changes. Suddenly it's space debris, data glitches, unexplained optical artifacts, nothing more. Even internal documents, when released through FOIA requests, are riddled with redactions. Observations are marked as anomalous events, but the explanations are always just beyond reach. Classified, unconfirmed, deferred. Why the caution? Because words matter. A single confirmation from NASA, even a subtle one, would shift the global conversation, open the floodgates, and maybe that's the point. The silence is not ignorance. It's management of perception and of implications, of control. NASA was built to explore space, but somewhere along the way it became just as skilled at managing the narrative of what's found there. So next time you hear them say, "We haven't found proof," listen closer. What they're really saying might be, "We found something, but you don't get to know yet." There's a strange line humanity rarely crosses. A space not between stars, but between knowing and admitting. We've always looked up, wondered, created myths and mathematics to explain the skies. We've sent machines, satellites, and people into that cold darkness. And with every discovery, we've peeled back one more layer of the unknown. But some truths still frighten us, because what if we're not alone? What if they are here, and always have been? Not monsters or invaders, but watchers, strangers, architects of something we can't yet comprehend. If NASA came forward tomorrow and announced definitively that we've been visited, what would that do to our religions, our governments, our sense of place? Would we listen? Would we believe them? Or would we dismiss it, as we've done for decades, as illusion, fantasy, conspiracy? Maybe that's why they don't say it. Because disclosure isn't just about information, it's about control. And to admit we're not alone is to admit we're not at the top. That the universe doesn't revolve around us. That someone or something else might be steering the story. That's a terrifying thought, so instead we build filters, we cut feeds, we delete tapes, we wrap mystery in silence and call it a glitch. We preserve the illusion that we're the only minds looking up, when maybe we're just the loudest. But silence is not the same as absence, and ambiguity is not the same as peace. So we find ourselves in this suspended moment, not quite in the dark, not yet in the light. A civilization on the edge of revelation, still clinging to the comfort of the known. Because maybe it's not that we're unprepared for the truth. Maybe we're just afraid of what it will make us become. In the vastness of space, silence is expected. It drapes everything, the stars, the planets, the dust of ancient collisions. It is the natural state of a universe expanding into the unknown. But some silences feel intentional. The transmissions that cut too early, the questions that never get answered, the evidence that vanishes without explanation. These aren't gaps in knowledge, they're choices. Perhaps NASA stays quiet not because it has nothing to say, but because it already said too much. And maybe what's out there isn't waiting to be found, but choosing to remain unseen. We tend to think of silence as a void, an absence. But what if in this case silence is the message? A test of maturity, a mirror for our fear, a space not meant to be filled with answers but with better questions. Because the deeper we look, the more the universe looks back, not with noise, not with contact, but with the soft hum of mystery and a signal we haven't yet learned to decode. So we keep listening, and in that listening we find ourselves wondering not if we are alone, but if we've ever truly been by ourselves at all.